This $5.2 billion mistake just got Carmax's CEO fired. This could be the end of Carmax as we know it. But what really happened goes way deeper than one bad decision. Picture America's largest used car dealer watching its stock crash 50% in 1 year, while its biggest competitor, Carvana, somehow rockets up 50%. The board panicked, fired CEO Bill Nash, and now the entire used car industry is asking the same terrifying question. If Carmax is dying, what does that say about the rest of us? But here's the shocking truth that's sending ripples through Wall Street. Carmax might actually be the honest one. While Carvana posts miracle numbers, Carmax is showing the brutal reality. Customers drowning in 23% interest loans, repossessions skyrocketing, and a subprime market that's about to explode like a financial time bomb. The $5.2 billion mistake wasn't just bad management. It exposed a system where desperate buyers are trapped in loans they can't afford, dealers are stuffing inventory to fake sales numbers, and the whole used car market is built on financial quicksand. Is Carmax's collapse the canary in the coal mine for a massive auto industry meltdown? Or are we watching the last honest player get destroyed while everyone else lies about their numbers? In 1993, a new kind of car dealership opened its doors in Richmond, Virginia. Carmax wasn't built by slick salesmen or Wall Street bankers. It was the brainchild of Circuit City's leadership, who believed buying a used car shouldn't feel like a gamble. New kind. The very first Carmax store promised something radical for the time. Every car had a fixed price, no haggling, no hidden fees, and every detail, down to the last scratch, was listed on the window. Their ads didn't shout about deals or gimmicks. Instead, they talked about trust, about making it possible for regular people to walk in, see the price, and know they weren't getting played. Customers lined up out the door that first week, drawn by the promise of a fair shake. Word spread quickly. By the time Carmax went public in 1997, the company had become a household name, known for its brightly lit lots and friendly staff. The founders insisted on rigorous data collection, tracking every sale and customer review, aiming to fix the used car business with facts instead of fast talk. Early leadership hammered home the idea that honesty wasn't just a slogan, it was a business model. Managers who tried to fudge numbers or push questionable deals didn't last long. The company's first annual reports featured proud statistics about customer satisfaction, not just sales growth. For many families, Carmax became the place you sent your kids for their first car, or where you went after a tough year, hoping for a decent trade-in and a fresh start. The brand's reputation grew on the back of these small, everyday victories. Employees felt it too. Store meetings often opened with stories of customers who had left happy, or of staff who had gone out of their way to make a deal work for someone just scraping by. Through the late 1990s, Carmax expanded across the country, sticking to its core belief. Transparency was the only way to build something that would last. Every decision, from inventory to financing, was supposed to be backed by data and guided by the simple rule: treat people the way you would want your own family treated. That's how Carmax built its name, and for a long time, it worked. Carmax's rise was not just about friendly salespeople and clean lots. Beneath the surface, the company built a system to make trust automatic. Transparency was the promise. By the early 2000s, Carmax was pouring millions into technology. They rolled out a national inventory network, digital appraisals, and a customer database that tracked satisfaction scores down to the decimal. The goal was simple: let data enforce fairness, not just hope people would do the right thing. Every store followed the same pricing algorithm, drawing from market data updated daily. A Ford F-150 in Phoenix cost the same as one in Pittsburgh. No backroom deals, no sudden markups. Shoppers searching online could see real-time prices, vehicle histories, and even reserve a car before setting foot on a lot. As the internet matured, Carmax doubled down. By 2016, they had launched an omni-channel platform, letting buyers move seamlessly from browsing on a phone to finishing paperwork in a store, or even having a car delivered to their doorstep. Customers rated every transaction, and those scores fed back into how staff were promoted or coached. Tech spending topped $200 million a year. Executives bragged that Carmax was a data company as much as a car dealer. Data became part of the brand. Industry analysts took notice. Surveys in 2018 and 2019 ranked Carmax at the top for customer satisfaction, beating old-school rivals and even some new digital upstarts. But this obsession with transparency carried its own risks. Algorithms work great when markets are stable, but every system has a blind spot. If demand shifted or prices dropped suddenly, the same rules that protected customers could leave the company exposed. Data teams watched for outliers and flagged anything odd, but the sheer scale, hundreds of thousands of cars, millions of data points, meant that even a small glitch could ripple nationwide. For years, the system held. Carmax's reputation for honesty was not just a marketing line. It was coded into every transaction, every report, every customer review. The promise was clear. No matter how big they got, nobody would get a raw deal. For a while, that promise seemed unbreakable. By the summer of 2024, Carmax's analytics team was staring at numbers that did not add up. The company's inventory dashboard, once a quiet reassurance, turned into a warning light. Cars were piling up on lots for more than 70 days on average, almost double what the models had predicted just a year earlier. The pricing algorithm, designed to keep Carmax competitive but fair, was now flagging a troubling trend. The company was consistently overbidding for used vehicles, paying well above what the market could support. Internal dashboards showed the overbid percentage climbing week after week. On a humid Thursday in September, a data lead drafted a memo for senior management. The document outlined the risk in plain numbers. If the acquisition pace and pricing did not change, Carmax would be sitting on hundreds of millions in depreciating inventory by year's end. The memo included a time-stamped chart, September 14th, 2024, at 2:16 p.m., showing the average purchase price outpacing projected resale values by nearly $1,400 per vehicle. The analytics team warned that this gap could balloon into $1 billion shortfall if demand weakened further or interest rates kept climbing. The memo did not just point to inventory. It called out loan risk too. Nearly 4 out of every 10 Carmax customers now had subprime credit, locking them into loans with interest rates as high as 23%. Risk models predicted a spike in defaults if the economy slowed or if gas prices jumped. The team's dashboards, normally filled with green and yellow, now flashed red across key markets: Cleveland, Houston, Atlanta, where repossessions and delinquencies were already ticking upward. But even as these warnings circulated in the system, the board's response was muted. Executives doubled down on the existing strategy, betting that seasonal demand would bail them out and that the pricing model would self-correct. The analytics team, used to having their reports shape company policy, watched as their recommendations were quietly filed away. The risk dashboards kept updating in real time, but the decision-makers seemed to be reading from a different playbook. For the data scientists, the numbers told a simple story. Carmax was buying too high, selling too slow, and lending too risky. The models did not predict a market crash outright. They just showed the probability of pain rising with every passing week. And as autumn wore on, the gap between the risk dashboards and the boardroom's optimism only grew wider. Inside Carmax's Richmond headquarters, the mood turned brittle as fall wore on. The boardroom, once a place for measured debate, became a pressure cooker. Crisis meetings multiplied, sometimes 2 or 3 a day, each one heavier than the last. Directors circled the same numbers, but no one wanted to be the first to call it. The system was blinking red, and the old playbook was not working. Some board members clung to the hope that the downturn was just a blip, that the holiday rush would clear the lots and risk models would snap back into line. Others, especially those with Wall Street backgrounds, pushed for drastic cuts or a total freeze on buying. The tension was thick enough to stall any real decision. In private, staff morale was collapsing. Anonymous surveys leaked to the business press described a workforce caught between fear and frustration. One survey, circulated in October, recorded the lowest confidence scores in company history. Employees wrote about the anxiety of daily cash flow projections, the dread of more layoffs, and the sense that leadership was paralyzed. One manager wrote that it is like we are all waiting for the other shoe to drop. Lenders were losing patience. Ally and Capital One started dialing in daily, pressing for tighter credit standards and proof that Carmax was bracing for a wave of bad loans. Each call ended the same way, promises to review risk models, but no new action. Analysts watching from the outside could only guess at the chaos. Press leaks described heated debates over whether Carmax's insistence on honest accounting had become a liability. Some directors argued that conservative loan loss reserves and transparent markdowns were scaring off investors, especially as Carvana's numbers seemed to defy gravity. Others countered that hiding the truth would only make things worse. The board split into camps, one desperate for a quick fix, the other terrified of making the wrong move and sinking the company for good. By late October, the crisis meetings blurred together. Directors demanded scenario after scenario from the finance team, but every projection ended in the same place: rising losses, falling sales, and a mountain of unsold cars. The board's indecision left managers in limbo, watching as the numbers slipped further out of reach. In the halls, staff whispered about who might be next to go. Some tried to rally around the company's founding values, but the sense of mission was fading fast. With each day of gridlock, the gap between Carmax's public face and its internal panic grew wider, setting the stage for the accounting shock that would soon rock the entire industry. Accountants at Carmax faced a spreadsheet that looked more like a crime scene than a balance sheet. August 2025 brought a write-down and impairment charges that would total $5.2 billion by the end of the quarter. These were not just technical footnotes buried in a filing. These numbers meant real losses, the kind that punch a hole straight through a company's future. The heart of the problem was how Carmax had to value its mountain of unsold cars. In the used car business, every vehicle on the lot is supposed to be marked to market, meaning its value is updated to reflect what it could fetch right now, not what the company hoped it would be worth. When prices started falling and cars sat unsold for weeks and then months, Carmax's models forced the company to admit the truth. The inventory was worth far less than what they had paid. The impairment filings told the story in black and white. By late summer, Carmax had to slash the book value of its inventory by hundreds of millions of dollars. Securities and Exchange Commission filings revealed that the company's loan loss reserves, money set aside to cover expected defaults, jumped nearly 25% year over year, with $117 million added in just the first quarter of 2026. The losses did not stop there. Forced asset sales and liquidation of slow-moving inventory meant selling cars at a loss, sometimes thousands of dollars below what they had cost to acquire and recondition. The entire process was mechanical, relentless, and public. Every quarter, the company had to update Wall Street and regulators with the latest numbers, each time admitting that the hole was deeper than before. Finance executives tried to explain the mechanics on earnings calls. They described how the mark-to-market process worked. Every car's value was compared to current auction prices and retail trends. And if the gap was too wide, the company had to record an impairment. There was no way to fudge the math. If a 2022 Honda Accord bought for $27,000 was now only selling for $22,000, the difference had to be recognized as a loss right then and there. The same rules applied to the loans on the books. as more customers fell behind on payments, especially those carrying 20% or higher interest rates. The company had to increase its reserves, acknowledging that a growing share of those loans would never be repaid in full. Mark-to-market accounting was supposed to make the system fair and transparent, but in a falling market, it became a meat grinder. Carmax's honesty about the numbers, once a badge of pride, now looked like a liability. Competitors that offloaded risk or used creative accounting did not have to show their bruises so openly. Carmax's filings laid out every cut, every loss, every adjustment. The $5.2 billion was not a single check written in one day. It was the sum of cascading decisions, each one forced by a system that refused to let hope override reality. Inside the finance team, there was no hiding from the math. Impairments, reserve increases, and forced markdowns were warnings that the market had turned. For Carmax, the numbers on the ledger were not just numbers. They were the story of a company forced to face the truth, even as others found ways to paper it over. News of the $5.2 billion write-down didn't just rattle employees and customers. It sent a shockwave through Wall Street's most powerful offices. In the days after Carmax's announcement, trading desks lit up with frantic calls. Analysts pored over the company's SEC filings, searching for any clue that might have warned them about the scale of losses. The stock, already battered, plunged another 13% in a single afternoon. Hedge funds and pension managers, who had once touted Carmax as a safe bet, now scrambled to explain to their clients how the nation's most trusted used car dealer had become a cautionary tale. Inside Carmax's boardroom, the mood grew even more tense. Directors who had stood by Bill Nash now distanced themselves from his decisions. Some quietly called in outside advisors, hoping to shield their own reputations from the fallout. The board moved quickly, installing David McCreight as interim chief executive and bringing back Thomas Folliard, a former executive, as interim chair. The message was clear: heads had to roll, and the old guard could no longer be trusted to steady the ship. Whispers of insider activity began to circulate. The company's Form 4 filings showed no mass executive stock sales in the weeks before the crash, but that didn't stop rumors from spreading across trading floors. Investors, burned by the sudden collapse, demanded answers. Some called for an independent investigation into board oversight. Others scoured activist hedge fund disclosures, looking for signs that outside pressure had forced the board's hand. But public records showed no activist letters or 13D filings, just a vacuum of confidence and a leadership team that looked cornered. Analyst reports grew sharper by the day. Morningstar and other research firms downgraded Carmax to sell, citing not just the scale of the losses, but the apparent paralysis at the top. Their notes highlighted a company that had lost its way, clinging to transparency even as competitors gamed the numbers. In private, fund managers questioned whether Carmax's honesty was a virtue or a fatal flaw. Some argued that the board's refusal to sugarcoat the losses had spooked investors, especially when Carvana's numbers seemed to defy gravity. Others wondered if the board had waited too long to act, letting the damage compound until there was no easy fix left. The fallout wasn't limited to Carmax. Other used car retailers watched their own shares wobble, with investors now suspicious of any company that relied on honest accounting or conservative loan loss reserves. In conference calls, executives from rival firms fielded pointed questions about their own risk controls and inventory models. The sense of distrust spread like wildfire. For every honest player forced into the spotlight, there were dozens more hoping they wouldn't be next. Behind the scenes, Carmax's new leadership promised a full review of risk practices and inventory strategy. Interim Chief Executive McCreight told staff that the board would leave no stone unturned in the hunt for stability. But for Wall Street, words weren't enough. The board's scramble to restore order only deepened the sense that the company, and maybe the entire industry, was teetering on the edge. Investors, once content with steady profits and clean books, now wondered if those very virtues had become a liability in a market built on illusion. The question hanging over every call and every filing was simple. If Carmax could fall this far, this fast, who could be trusted next? John's story doesn't show up in any quarterly earnings call or glossy investor deck. He's a plumber from Indiana, 44 years old, who bought a used F-150 from Carmax in the spring of 2024. The sticker price was $34,500. John's credit was bruised. Medical bills, a divorce, a few missed payments on an old Chevy. Carmax's finance arm approved him anyway, but at 22.7% APR. That meant a payment of just over $400 a month, every month, for 7 years. When overtime dried up at the factory that fall, John started falling behind. By the following summer, he was 3 months late. The repo guy showed up before dawn, rolled the truck off the curb, and left John with a pile of paperwork and no way to get to work. Stories like John's are multiplying. Federal Reserve data in 2025 showed auto loan delinquencies hitting a 15-year high. At Carmax, nearly 4 out of every 10 loans now go to borrowers with subprime credit, people like John, who have few other options and are forced to accept sky-high rates. For many, it's a trap. Miss a payment, and the spiral begins. Repossession rates have jumped 27% year over year among subprime borrowers, according to Fitch Ratings. The impact is personal. Lost jobs, missed rent, families scrambling for rides. Reality hangs heavy here, but the numbers are big enough to threaten the whole system. Carmax's own filings show loan loss reserves doubling in a single year, with $117 million added in just the first quarter of 2026. That is not just an accounting line. It is a warning that thousands of people are slipping through the cracks. Jonathan Smoke, chief economist at Cox Automotive, put it bluntly: the single greatest risk to the used car market today is unchecked subprime lending. Carmax is taking its lumps by being upfront about the numbers. Wall Street analysts call Carmax the canary in the coal mine, the first to admit how bad things really are. But for borrowers like John, it is not about market signals or balance sheets. It is about losing the one thing you need to hold a job in America: a reliable set of wheels. The pain is real, and it is spreading. As the repo trucks roll out each morning, the true cost of the $5.2 billion mistake is not measured in earnings per share. It is measured in broken routines, empty driveways, and another family trying to figure out how to start over. Carvana's numbers tell a story that Wall Street wants to believe: endless growth, rising margins, and a business model immune to the pain crushing everyone else. But look beneath the headlines and the game changes. While Carmax is forced to admit every loss, Carvana has a secret weapon: its own family-owned finance pipeline. The Garcia family controls not just Carvana, but also DriveTime and Bridgecrest, two companies that buy up Carvana's riskiest loans. When Carvana originates a pile of subprime auto loans, they do not hold the risk. Instead, they bundle these shaky loans and sell them, often at full face value, to DriveTime or Bridgecrest. On paper, Carvana's books look pristine. Bad loans vanish, revenue jumps, and Wall Street applauds. But the risk has not disappeared. It has just been handed off to another pocket of the same family empire. A former Carvana risk analyst described the process: we would package loans with questionable repayment prospects, but as long as the loans left Carvana's books, Wall Street did not care who was on the other end. This is not just creative accounting, it is a shell game. The same dollars bounce between related companies, letting Carvana book profits up front and hide the mounting risk from investors and regulators. CFRA analyst Garrett Nelson put it plainly: Carvana's results are almost too good to be true. If there is shell game accounting with related parties, it is time for investors and regulators to demand more transparency. Carvana's SEC filings reveal hundreds of millions in loan sales to entities with close family ties, but the details are often redacted or buried in footnotes. Whistleblowers and investigative reporters have traced the flow of money, finding that some of the so-called independent buyers are trusts linked to Cerberus Capital, where a Carvana director holds a senior role. In 2024 alone, Carvana offloaded nearly $1 billion in loans to these related parties, propping up their reported earnings even as the actual risk ballooned off balance sheet. While Carmax is hammered for every honest admission, Carvana's engineered results reward the very tactics that keep real losses out of sight. Analysts warn that this kind of financial engineering does not erase risk, it just buries it deeper. For regular Americans, the danger is clear. When the shell game ends, it is not the Garcias or Wall Street who get stuck with the bill. It is the families whose loans were never meant to survive, and the investors left holding paper that is worth a lot less than anyone wants to admit. Dealers across the country started sounding the alarm as their lots filled with cars they never asked for. Manufacturers like Ford and Stellantis ramped up shipments well past what showrooms could sell, pushing the average inventory ratio to 1.8 months, levels not seen since before the pandemic. For most independent dealers, this was not just an inconvenience, it was financial quicksand. Every unsold SUV parked on the lot meant another floor plan loan racking up interest, another payment due whether the car moved or not. Some dealers called it channel stuffing. Others called it survival, at least for the automakers. Either way, it left local businesses exposed, forced to swallow inventory and pray for buyers who never showed. Dealer coalitions, including the National Independent Automobile Dealers Association, began to organize. They drafted open letters, lobbied lawmakers, and collected stories of small-town owners teetering on the edge. In early 2025, attorneys general from states like New York, Illinois, and California sent information requests to major manufacturers and dealer groups. The letters demanded data on inventory allocations, sales incentives, and the timing of vehicle deliveries. Regulators wanted to know if manufacturers were propping up their own quarterly results by flooding the system with unsold cars, leaving dealers to pick up the tab. The legal pressure did not stop there. Attorneys general also asked for records on subprime loan approvals, repossession rates, and any internal communications about managing excess inventory. For the first time in years, the threat of state-level legal action hung over the industry. In private, some dealers welcomed the scrutiny, hoping it would force automakers to slow the flood. Others worried that too much sunlight would spook lenders and insurers, making it even harder to stay afloat. Scrutiny felt like the only chance some dealers had to level the playing field. As the months dragged on, the uncertainty deepened. Inventory ratios stayed high, and floor plan costs kept rising. Dealers who spoke up risked losing their allocations. Those who stayed quiet risked bankruptcy. The coalition's warnings grew sharper. If channel stuffing continued, and if legal probes turned into lawsuits, the pain would not stop at the dealer lot. It would ripple through financing arms, lenders, and even the manufacturers themselves. The old promise that everyone in the chain could win as long as cars kept moving looked more fragile by the day. The question now was not just who would blink first, but whether the whole system could hold under the weight of so much unsold metal. Today, while Wall Street bets on illusions, millions of hardworking Americans are left holding loans at 23% interest and underwater cars. The collapse at Carmax isn't just a boardroom drama, it's a warning shot for every family buying on credit. If transparency gets punished and deception gets rewarded, the real losers aren't CEOs, they're us. The next mistake won't cost billions. It could cost trust in the system itself.